Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Manhattan's Fifth Avenue as Lena Parker checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. The address was correct. She was certain of it. St. Thomas Cathedral, the email had said. Interview at 4 o'clock sharp. She smoothed down her navy blue dress, the nicest thing in her closet, and adjusted the folder containing her resume and portfolio. This job opportunity as an events coordinator for the prestigious Sterling Events Company could change everything. After 6 months of unemployment and mounting bills, she couldn't afford to mess this up. The cathedral loomed before her, its Gothic spires reaching toward the cloudy sky like ancient fingers. Lena had always found churches intimidating, their vast spaces and hushed atmospheres making her feel small and out of place. But today, she squared her shoulders and climbed the stone steps with determination. The heavy wooden doors required both hands to pull open, and as they swung inward, a wave of sound rushed out to greet her. Music, not the solemn organ hymns she'd expected, but a full orchestra playing something bright and celebratory. Lena froze in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. The cathedral's interior blazed with light from hundreds of candles arranged in elegant candelabras along the aisles. White roses and ivory ribbons adorned every pew, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Rows upon rows of well-dressed guests filled the seats, their faces turned expectantly toward the entrance, toward her. A wave of panic crashed over Lena as she realized her terrible mistake. This wasn't an interview venue. This was a wedding. She'd walked straight into someone's wedding ceremony. Her face flushed hot with embarrassment as hundreds of eyes fixed upon her. She needed to leave immediately, to slip out before anyone noticed her intrusion. But her feet seemed rooted to the marble floor, paralyzed by mortification. Then everything happened at once. The orchestra swelled into the familiar strains of the wedding march. 2 ushers in pristine tuxedos appeared at her sides, each taking one of her arms with practiced efficiency. Before Lena could protest or explain her mistake, they were guiding her forward down the long white runner that stretched toward the altar. She tried to speak, to tell them they'd made a terrible error, but her voice caught in her throat. The folder slipped from her trembling fingers, her resume and carefully prepared portfolio scattering across the white carpet. The guests rose to their feet in a rustling wave of silk and satin. Women dabbed at their eyes with lace handkerchiefs. Men nodded approvingly, and Lena walked forward in a daze, her mind screaming at her to run even as her legs continued their mechanical march toward the altar. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. Any moment now she would wake up in her cramped studio apartment, laugh at the absurdity of the dream, and get ready for her real interview. But the dream didn't end. Instead, it grew more vivid with every step. She could feel the plush carpet beneath her heels, hear the whispers of admiration from the guests, smell the overwhelming sweetness of the floral arrangements. At the altar stood a man in an immaculate charcoal gray suit, his back to her. Beside him, a priest held a leather-bound book, his expression serene and official. The ushers delivered Lena to the altar steps and melted away, leaving her exposed and alone. The man turned to face her, and Lena's breath caught in her chest. He was possibly the most handsome man she had ever seen in person. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes were a striking gray-green, intense and penetrating. But what struck Lena most was the expression on his face. Not surprise or confusion, but something like satisfaction mixed with barely contained amusement. He reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and firm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles in a gesture that felt strangely intimate. The contact sent a jolt through her system, momentarily derailing her panicked thoughts. She opened her mouth to explain, to apologize, to do something to fix this catastrophic misunderstanding. But before she could form words, he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Play along, he whispered, his voice a low rumble that only she could hear. I'll explain everything later. Just trust me for the next 10 minutes. Lena's eyes went wide with shock. What kind of situation had she stumbled into? This man clearly knew she wasn't supposed to be here, yet he wanted her to continue this charade. Every logical impulse screamed at her to flee, to announce the mistake publicly and deal with the embarrassment. But something in his eyes, a mixture of desperation and determination, made her hesitate. The priest cleared his throat delicately. Shall we begin? The man gave an almost imperceptible nod, his gaze never leaving Lena's face. The priest opened his book and began to speak in a rich, resonant voice that filled the cathedral. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sebastian Ashford Sterling and his chosen bride in holy matrimony. Sebastian Ashford Sterling. The name exploded in Lena's mind like a firework. Everyone in New York knew that name. Sebastian Sterling was a billionaire entrepreneur, the 32-year-old founder and CEO of Sterling Enterprises, one of the largest commercial real estate development firms in the country. His face regularly graced the covers of Forbes and Business Insider. He was famous for his business acumen, his philanthropic efforts, and his resolute bachelorhood despite being one of the city's most eligible men, and apparently, today was his wedding day. Except the bride was missing, and Lena Parker, unemployed events coordinator, had accidentally taken her place. The priest's voice continued, speaking of love and commitment, of sacred bonds and eternal promises. Lena heard the words as if from underwater, her mind racing through possibilities. Where was the real bride? Why wasn't Sebastian stopping this farce? What would happen when everyone discovered she was an imposter? She could see her future unraveling. Imagine the headlines. Con artist crashes billionaire's wedding. She'd never work in events again. She might face criminal charges. Her mother would be mortified. Sebastian's hand tightened slightly on hers, drawing her back to the present moment. She risked a glance at his face and found him watching her with an expression of calm encouragement, as if they were partners in some elaborate plan rather than strangers caught in an absurd mistake. The sheer audacity of his composure steadied her somehow. If he could maintain this level of cool under such bizarre circumstances, surely she could manage not to faint or run screaming from the cathedral. The ceremony proceeded with dreamlike inevitability. The priest spoke of the sanctity of marriage, the importance of trust and partnership. Lena's mind kept snagging on that last word. Trust. Sebastian had asked her to trust him, this man she'd never met before, in a situation that defied all logic and reason. Yet here she stood, her hand in his, participating in what had to be the strangest moment of her 28 years of life. From somewhere in the front pew, an elegant older woman watched the proceedings with sharp, assessing eyes. She wore a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than Lena's annual salary, and diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. Her expression was difficult to read, something between approval and calculation. Lena had the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated and measured against some unknown standard. "The rings, please," the priest intoned. A small boy in a miniature tuxedo stepped forward, carrying a velvet cushion bearing 2 platinum bands. Sebastian released Lena's hand long enough to take one of the rings. It caught the candlelight, sending out sparks of brilliance. He reached for her left hand, and Lena found herself extending it automatically, as if her body had decided to cooperate with this madness even if her brain hadn't caught up. The ring slid onto her finger with surprising ease, as if it had been made for her. It was beautiful in its simplicity, a band of platinum set with a single perfect diamond. Sebastian held her hand for a moment after placing the ring, his thumb again tracing that gentle pattern across her knuckles. The gesture was becoming familiar, almost comforting in its repetition. Then, it was her turn. With shaking fingers, Lena took the second ring from the cushion. It was heavier than she'd expected, substantial and real. She looked up at Sebastian, silently pleading for some sign that this was all about to end, that he would call it off and explain everything. But he simply extended his left hand, palm down. Waiting patiently, Lena slid the ring onto his finger, acutely aware that every eye in the cathedral was fixed on this moment. The ring settled into place, and she heard several women in the audience sigh with satisfaction. This was what they had come to see, these tangible symbols of commitment and forever promises. They had no idea they were watching an elaborate piece of theater, a performance where one of the lead actors didn't even know her lines. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, the priest proclaimed, his voice rising with ceremonial authority, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He paused, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You may kiss the bride. Time seemed to slow and stretch. This was the moment that would either expose the entire charade or cement it beyond retrieval. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Sebastian was going to kiss her, a complete stranger, in front of hundreds of people, as part of a wedding ceremony that couldn't possibly be legal or real. She should stop this right now, should finally find her voice, and announce the terrible mistake. But Sebastian was already moving, his hands coming up to frame her face with unexpected gentleness. His eyes held hers, and for a moment, she saw something flicker in their depths, an apology perhaps, or a request for forgiveness for what he was about to do. Then he leaned in, and his lips met hers. The kiss was soft and brief, appropriate for a church ceremony. But there was something in it that made Lena's knees weak, a current of electricity that had nothing to do with the absurdity of the situation, and everything to do with the simple fact of human connection. When Sebastian pulled back, she saw surprise in his eyes, as if he too had felt something unexpected in that moment. The cathedral erupted in applause. The orchestra burst into a triumphant recessional. Sebastian took Lena's hand and tucked it into the crook of his arm, and together they turned to face the congregation. Hundreds of faces beamed at them with joy and approval. Cameras flashed from every direction. Someone released white doves from the back of the church, and they fluttered overhead in a chaos of wings and cooing. Sebastian guided her down the aisle at a measured pace, nodding to guests on either side. Lena tried to smile, but her face felt frozen. This was really happening. She had just participated in a wedding ceremony with Sebastian Sterling. She was wearing his ring. He had kissed her in front of what looked like half of New York's social elite. The implications crashed over her in waves, each more overwhelming than the last. They emerged from the cathedral into the late afternoon light. A fleet of luxury cars waited at the curb, led by a vintage Rolls-Royce decorated with white ribbons and flowers. Sebastian steered her toward it with practiced ease, as if escorting accidentally substituted brides was something he did every day. A uniformed driver held the door open, and before Lena could gather her thoughts enough to protest, she found herself settled into the leather interior, Sebastian sliding in beside her. The door closed with a solid, expensive thunk, sealing them into sudden quiet. Through the tinted windows, Lena could see guests pouring from the cathedral, laughing and chattering excitedly. The driver got into the front seat and started the engine, but didn't pull away from the curb. They sat in suspended animation, the noise of the celebration muffled to a distant murmur. Sebastian let out a long breath and ran his hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect styling. The gesture made him look younger, more human. When he turned to face Lena, his expression had shifted from the confident groom to something more uncertain, almost vulnerable. I owe you an explanation, he said quietly, and probably an apology. Actually, definitely an apology. Lena found her voice at last, though it came out shakier than she would have liked. What just happened in there? Why didn't you tell them I wasn't supposed to be there? Sebastian leaned back against the seat, his eyes closing briefly. Because if I had, my grandmother would have won, and I couldn't let that happen. Your grandmother? Lena looked back toward the cathedral, remembering the elegant woman in champagne and diamonds. What does she have to do with any of this? Everything. Sebastian's jaw tightened. My grandmother, Victoria Sterling, controls the family trust. When my grandfather died 10 years ago, he left provisions in his will. The majority of his estate, including voting shares in Sterling Enterprises, would pass to me on my 33rd birthday. But only if I was married. The pieces began to click into place, forming a picture that was both clearer and more complicated than Lena had imagined. And if you're not married? Then, control passes to my grandmother, who has very different ideas about how the company should be run. Ideas that would dismantle everything I've built, lay off thousands of employees, and turn Sterling Enterprises into a vehicle for her personal vendettimes against the business community. Sebastian opened his eyes, and Lena saw genuine pain there. My birthday is in 3 days. This wedding was supposed to be my solution. So you were engaged? To someone who didn't show up? The thought of some woman choosing not to marry Sebastian Sterling seemed almost incomprehensible, yet Lena felt an unexpected flash of sympathy for the absent bride. Not exactly. Sebastian's mouth twisted in a bitter smile. The engagement was arranged. A business transaction, essentially. Olivia Marchand, daughter of the Marchand Hotel empire. It made sense on paper. Our companies complemented each other. The merger would benefit both families. We'd been preparing for this day for 6 months. What happened to her? She ran. The admission seemed to cost him something. Left a note at the hotel this morning. She'd fallen in love with someone else. Someone her family didn't approve of. She couldn't go through with a loveless marriage, even for the sake of business. I can't blame her for that, actually. It was the honest thing to do. Lena processed this information, her mind spinning. But why go through with the ceremony anyway? With me, a complete stranger? Sebastian turned to look at her fully, and she saw calculation mixed with something like desperation in his eyes, because everyone was already here. The cathedral was booked, the reception paid for, the contract signed. But more importantly, because my grandmother was watching. If I'd canceled the wedding, announced that I'd been jilted, she would have had grounds to contest the will. Failure to fulfill the marriage requirement due to my own inadequacy as a potential spouse. Her lawyers were ready. So instead, you married the first woman who walked through the door? When I saw you standing there in that navy dress, looking terrified and clutching a folder like a lifeline, I had about 3 seconds to make a decision. Sebastian reached out and gently touched the ring on her finger, the one he'd placed there minutes ago. You looked kind and honest. 2 qualities in desperately short supply in my world. I took a chance that you might help me if I asked. You didn't ask, Lena pointed out. You told me to play along and trust you. Would you have agreed if I'd had time to explain? She considered this honestly. Probably not. This is insane. Completely insane. Sebastian agreed. But also possibly the answer to both our problems. Lena blinked at him. Both our problems? I only have one problem right now, and it's that I accidentally participated in a fraudulent marriage ceremony. Is it fraudulent, though? Sebastian's tone shifted, becoming more businesslike. We both said the vows. You're of legal age and sound mind. The license was filed. The ceremony performed by a registered officiant. Technically, we're actually married. The full weight of the situation crashed down on Lena like a collapsing building. Oh my God. Oh my God. We're married. I'm married. I'm married to you. I don't even know you. I came here for a job interview. A job interview? For the first time, Sebastian looked genuinely confused. Lena dug into her small purse and pulled out her phone, hands shaking as she navigated to her email. She held it out to Sebastian, showing him the message. Sterling Events Company. Interview at 4 o'clock at St. Thomas Cathedral. See? I had the right place. Sebastian read the email, his frown deepening. Then something like understanding dawned on his face. followed by what might have been amusement. Sterling Events Company is my grandmother's pet project. She books events for high society. The interview was probably real, but he checked his watch. 4 o'clock. The ceremony started at 3:30. So I was half an hour early for my interview and walked into your wedding instead. And my grandmother, who is nothing if not an opportunist, probably saw you arrive and had her people direct you into the cathedral rather than to the meeting room where the interview was supposed to take place. Sebastian's expression darkened. She was testing me, seeing if I would go through with the ceremony under impossible circumstances, or if I would crack under pressure. Lena felt anger beginning to cut through her panic. So I was just a convenient pawn in some family power struggle? Your grandmother deliberately set this up? I don't think she expected me to actually go through with it, Sebastian admitted. She probably thought I would cancel, giving her the ammunition she needed to challenge the will. The fact that I didn't, that we didn't, means she's lost this round. But it also means we have a bigger problem. Bigger than accidentally getting married? Sebastian leaned forward, his expression intense. The marriage has to appear legitimate. If my grandmother suspects it's a sham, she'll have her lawyers investigating every detail. They'll interview guests, examine our story for inconsistencies, look for any evidence that it was staged. And if they find proof that we committed fraud, I could lose everything. The company, my grandfather's legacy, the jobs of 3,000 employees who depend on Sterling Enterprises. Lena pressed her hands to her temples, trying to think through the chaos in her mind. So what are you proposing? A business arrangement. We stay married for 1 year, long enough to satisfy the terms of my grandfather's will and for the trust to transfer. During that time, we maintain the appearance of a real marriage. You move into my penthouse, attend social functions with me, convince the world and my grandmother that this was love at first sight, not a desperate improvisation. And in exchange? Sebastian's eyes met hers steadily. I pay you $5 million, and when the year is up, we divorce quietly. You walk away with enough money to never worry about employment again. And I retain control of my company. $5 million. The number was so large it didn't seem real. Lena could pay off her student loans, help her mother retire, maybe even start her own business. She could have security, freedom, choices, all for 1 year of pretending to be married to a man who, despite being a complete stranger, had just given her the most unexpected kiss of her life. But it was also a lie, a massive, public deception that could blow up in spectacular fashion. I need to think, she said finally. This is too much, too fast. A few hours ago, I was worried about a job interview. Now you're asking me to commit to a year of fraud. It's not fraud. If the marriage is real, Sebastian pointed out. And it is real, at least in the legal sense. We're just choosing to end it after a specified period, which plenty of couples do. After knowing each other for less than an hour, stranger things have happened. Sebastian reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. The reception is at the Plaza Hotel. We're expected there in about 20 minutes. I won't force you to come, but if you don't, I'll have to face my grandmother and 300 guests alone and explain why my bride disappeared immediately after the ceremony. It won't be pretty. Lena took the card, seeing his personal cell number written in neat script. And if I do come to the reception, then we get through tonight together. We'll talk more tomorrow, when we've both had time to process. You can stay in the penthouse, in a separate bedroom, he added quickly, seeing her expression. No pressure, no obligations beyond keeping up appearances for 1 evening. After that, you make your choice about the arrangement. The car idled at the curb, engine purring softly. Through the window, Lena could see the wedding guests starting to get into their own vehicles, preparing to head to the reception. In a few minutes, this brief moment of privacy would end. She would have to decide. She looked down at the ring on her finger, the diamond catching the light. It was beautiful and heavy and foreign, like the life Sebastian was offering her, terrifying and tempting in equal measure. "One evening," she said slowly. "I'll get through the reception with you. But tomorrow, we sit down and discuss this properly. All the details, all the potential consequences. And I get to make an informed decision without anyone pressuring me." Relief washed over Sebastian's face, transforming it completely. He looked years younger, the weight of worry lifting visibly from his shoulders. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." "I don't," Lena agreed. "That's part of the problem." Sebastian leaned forward and pressed the intercom button. "James, we're ready to head to the plaza." The car pulled smoothly into traffic, joining the procession of wedding vehicles making their way through Manhattan. Lena watched the city slide past the tinted windows, everything familiar suddenly looking strange and dreamlike. How had her life turned upside down so completely in the span of 30 minutes? "I should at least know some basic things about you," she said, turning back to Sebastian. "If we're going to convince people we're madly in love." "Fair point." Sebastian shifted to face her more fully. "What do you want to know? Let's start with the simple stuff." "Favorite food?" "Italian. Specifically, my grandmother's cook makes this incredible ossobuco." Sebastian smiled slightly at the memory. "Ironically, the same grandmother currently trying to steal my company." "Favorite movie?" "The Godfather Part 2. I have terrible taste, I know. Actually, that's my favorite too." Lena felt a small spark of genuine connection. "The scene where Michael confronts Fredo breaks my heart every time." "Family betrayal is a recurring theme in my life," Sebastian said dryly. "What about you? Tell me something real. Not interview answers, but who Lena Parker actually is." Lena considered the question. "I wanted to be a dancer when I was young. Studied ballet for 12 years, but I wasn't quite good enough for professional companies, so I shifted to events coordination. I liked the idea of creating beautiful moments for people, even if I couldn't perform myself. That's why you were interviewing with Sterling Events. That's why I was interviewing everywhere. The events industry took a major hit over the past few years. Lots of coordinators competing for fewer positions." She looked out the window at Central Park rolling past. "I've been unemployed for 6 months. My savings are gone. I was 3 weeks away from having to move back to Ohio with my mother." "And now you're married to a billionaire," Sebastian observed. "The universe has a strange sense of humor, or a cruel one. I haven't decided which yet." Lena turned the simple platinum band on her finger, still not quite believing it was there. "What happens at this reception? What are people expecting?" Sebastian considered this. "First dance, cake cutting. I'll probably have to give a speech. My grandmother will definitely give a speech, and it will be full of subtle barbs disguised as loving advice. Various relatives and business associates will want to meet you and offer congratulations. It will be exhausting and probably terrifying. Wonderful. I'm so prepared for this." "You did fine in the ceremony," Sebastian said, and there was genuine admiration in his voice. "Most people would have run screaming or fainted. You held it together under impossible circumstances. I was in shock. I'm still in shock, actually. Well, stay in shock for about 4 more hours, and we'll get through this." The car was slowing now, approaching the Plaza Hotel. Even through the tinted windows, Lena could see the crowd gathering outside. Photographers with long lens cameras jostled for position behind velvet ropes. A red carpet had been rolled out from the curb to the entrance. "Oh no," Lena breathed. "Are those paparazzi?" Sebastian Sterling's wedding was always going to be news, Sebastian said apologetically. "I should have warned you. Just keep your head up, smile, and don't answer any questions. James will get us through quickly." The car stopped, and immediately cameras began flashing. Even through the tinted windows, the lights were disorienting. Lena's heart rate kicked up another notch. This was real. This was happening. In a moment, she would step out of this car and into a role she had never auditioned for, in front of an audience of millions. Hey. Sebastian's hand found hers, his grip steady and warm. Look at me. She did, finding herself caught by those gray-green eyes. We can do this, he said quietly. One step at a time. Just follow my lead, and I promise I'll get you through it. There was something in his voice that calmed the worst of her panic. Maybe it was the fact that he seemed genuinely concerned for her well-being, rather than just using her as a convenient solution to his problem. Or maybe it was simply that she didn't have any other choice at this point. She was already in the car, already wearing the ring, already legally bound to this man whether she liked it or not. Okay, she whispered. Let's do this. James opened the door, and sound crashed over them like a wave. Shouts from photographers, the click and whir of camera shutters, people calling Sebastian's name and asking questions all at once. Sebastian stepped out first, then turned and offered Lena his hand with an expression of such tender devotion that for a moment she almost believed it was real. She took his hand and emerged into the chaos. Flashbulbs exploded like small supernovas. Lena's instinct was to shield her face, but Sebastian had her hand firmly in his other arm coming around her waist to steady her. He guided her forward with practiced ease, smiling for the cameras but never stopping long enough for them to ask questions. Hotel security created a corridor through the crowd, and in less than 30 seconds they were through the doors and into the relative quiet of the plaza's opulent lobby. You're a natural, Sebastian murmured in her ear. I think I'm going to be sick, Lena replied, but she kept the smile fixed on her face. They were swept immediately into an elevator that whisked them up to the grand ballroom. The doors opened to reveal a space that made the cathedral look understated by comparison. Thousands of white roses created cascading walls of flowers. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the gilded ceiling, their light reflecting off mirrored panels and champagne flutes. A 12-piece orchestra played soft jazz from a raised platform. Tables draped in ivory silk surrounded a parquet dance floor that gleamed like glass. And everywhere people, beautiful people in designer clothes, dripping with jewelry, holding glasses of champagne that probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent. They turned as one when Sebastian and Lena entered, a ripple of recognition and approval moving through the crowd. An elegantly dressed woman with a clipboard materialized beside them. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, if you'll follow me to the receiving line. Mrs. Sterling. The name hit Lena like a physical blow. That was her now, at least for tonight. Maybe for the next year if she agreed to Sebastian's proposal. Mrs. Sebastian Sterling. It sounded like someone else entirely, not the woman who'd woken up this morning worried about making rent. The receiving line was a blur of faces and names Lena knew she should remember, but that evaporated from her mind as soon as each person moved on. Business partners, society figures, politicians, celebrities. They all offered variations of the same congratulations and curiosity. Where had they met? How long had they been dating? Why had they kept the relationship so quiet? Sebastian handled each question with smooth deflection. We wanted to keep our relationship private for as long as possible. You know how the press can be. When you know she's the one, why wait? He was good at this, Lena realized, smooth and practiced in a way that suggested he'd been navigating high society social situations his entire life. Which of course he had. This was his world, as natural to him as breathing. While she felt like an alien who'd crash-landed on a hostile planet. Finally, the elegant woman in champagne and diamonds approached. Up close, Victoria Sterling was even more intimidating than she'd been from afar. Her face was a roadmap of excellent plastic surgery, her posture perfect, her expression one of cool assessment that made Lena feel like a specimen under a microscope. Sebastian. Darling, Victoria said, her voice cultured and cool. She offered her cheek for Sebastian to kiss, which he did with obvious reluctance. What a lovely ceremony. Though I must say, it was all rather rushed and mysterious. You've kept this young lady quite hidden from the family. Grandmother, this is Lena, Sebastian said, his arm tightening protectively around Lena's waist. My wife. How do you do, Mrs. Sterling? Lena managed, extending her hand. Victoria took it with 2 fingers, the briefest of touches. How charming. And where exactly did you two meet? Sebastian has been so secretive about the whole affair. Lena's mind went blank. They hadn't prepared a story, hadn't coordinated their lies. She opened her mouth with no idea what would come out. At a gallery opening, Sebastian interjected smoothly. 3 months ago, the Rothman exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. Lena was there reviewing the event for a publication, and we quite literally bumped into each other near the Pollock exhibit. How romantic, Victoria said, in a tone that suggested she found it anything but. And what publication was that, dear? Modern Events Quarterly, Lena said, the lie forming with surprising ease. It was a real publication, one she'd read religiously when she was employed. I was freelancing at the time. I see. And your family? Where are they this evening? I don't recall meeting anyone from your side during the ceremony. The barbs were getting sharper. Lena felt her cheeks flush, but Sebastian stepped in again. Lena's mother is in Ohio, dealing with a health situation. We kept the wedding small and quick out of consideration for her circumstances. We'll have a larger celebration later when she's well enough to travel. It was a masterful deflection, creating sympathy while shutting down further questions. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the maneuver but unable to push back without appearing heartless. How thoughtful, she said. Well, I suppose we should let you greet your other guests. We'll have plenty of time to get acquainted, I'm sure. The words sounded more like a threat than a promise. She drifted away in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely concealed suspicion. She knows, Lena whispered urgently once Victoria was out of earshot. She knows something's wrong. She suspects. Sebastian corrected. But suspicion isn't proof. We just need to be consistent and convincing. He looked down at her, and his expression softened. You're doing amazingly well. I know this is overwhelming. Overwhelming doesn't begin to cover it, the elegant coordinator returned, gently shepherding them toward the center of the ballroom. It's time for the first dance, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. The orchestra shifted into a romantic waltz, something classical and sweeping. The crowd parted, forming a circle around the dance floor. Hundreds of expectant faces turned toward them, phones raised to capture the moment. Lena's stomach dropped. I should mention, she whispered frantically to Sebastian as he led her onto the polished floor. I haven't ballroom danced since I was 16, and I was terrible at it even then. Then it's fortunate I've had lessons since I was 6, Sebastian replied. He drew her close, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers in the traditional frame. Just follow my lead. I won't let you fall. The music swelled, and Sebastian began to move. Despite her panic, Lena found that he was right. He was an excellent leader, his movements clear and confident. She stumbled only once in the first few measures, and he smoothly covered it, making the misstep look intentional. After a few rotations around the floor, she began to relax into the rhythm, letting him guide her through the turns and sweeps. See? Sebastian murmured, pulling her slightly closer. You're a natural. I'm faking it and praying I don't trip and create a viral video that lives forever on the internet. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. Welcome to my entire existence. They spun across the floor, the world blurring into streaks of candlelight and flowers. Lena found herself actually looking at Sebastian rather than watching her feet, meeting his eyes and seeing something there that looked almost like enjoyment. Maybe he was a good actor, or maybe there was something about dancing with another person, being this close and moving in sync, that created its own kind of intimacy regardless of circumstance. When the song ended, applause erupted around them. Other couples joined them on the floor, and suddenly, Lena and Sebastian were no longer the sole focus of attention. She breathed a sigh of relief. "One trial down," Sebastian said. "Several more to go." The evening proceeded in a surreal parade of rituals and performances. They cut the elaborately tiered cake, coconut with champagne buttercream, Sebastian informed her, and fed each other small bites while cameras flashed. They posed for formal photographs with various combinations of family members and important guests. They smiled until Lena's face hurt, and nodded through toasts that ranged from touching to tedious. Through it all, Sebastian remained at her side, a steady presence in the chaos. He had a gift for reading the room, for knowing when to introduce her to someone important and when to extract them from a conversation that was growing uncomfortable. He brought her champagne when she looked overwhelmed, and food when he noticed she hadn't eaten. Small gestures, but they made the impossible evening bearable. As the reception wore on and the champagne flowed more freely, the guests became louder and more relaxed. The dance floor filled with couples swaying to increasingly modern music. Sebastian was pulled away repeatedly by business associates who wanted to discuss deals or relatives who wanted to interrogate him about his sudden marriage. Each time he tried to bring Lena along, but eventually she insisted he go handle his obligations while she caught her breath. She found a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The view was spectacular. The park a dark expanse dotted with lights, the city glittering in every direction beyond. Lena pressed her forehead against the cool glass, trying to ground herself in something real. "You look like you could use this." Lena turned to find a woman about her own age offering her a glass of champagne. She was striking rather than pretty, with sharp features and intelligent dark eyes. Her burgundy dress was elegant and understated, and she wore minimal jewelry. Something about her seemed different from the other guests, less performative, more genuine. "Thank you," Lena said, accepting the glass gratefully. "I'm not much of a drinker usually, but tonight seems to call for an exception." "I'm Zara Okonkwo," the woman said, extending her hand. "I work with Sebastian at Sterling Enterprises. Chief Financial Officer, which sounds more impressive than it is. Mostly I just make sure he doesn't spend money on ridiculous things." "Lena," she replied, shaking Zara's hand. Then, because it still felt surreal to say, "Apparently I'm Mrs. Sterling now." Zara's smile was knowing. "Apparently is an interesting word choice." Lena's guard went up immediately. "What do you mean?" "Relax," Zara said, taking a sip of her own champagne. "I'm not interrogating you. I'm actually probably the closest thing Sebastian has to a real friend, which is depressing for both of us, but there it is. I know about the situation with his grandmother and the will. Did you know about Olivia Marchand? That she ran away this morning?" "Yes, Sebastian called me in a panic around noon. I've been waiting all day to see how this disaster would play out." Zara studied Lena with open curiosity. "I have to say, you were not the solution I expected." "I wasn't anyone's solution," Lena said tiredly. "I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time, depending on your perspective. And now Sebastian has asked you to stay married to him for a year in exchange for a large sum of money?" Lena's eyes widened. "He told you that?" "He texted me about 20 minutes ago asking if I thought $5 million was a reasonable offer, or if he should go higher." Zara's expression was amused. "For what it's worth, I told him he should have started at 10, given what he's asking of you." "This is insane," Lena said, the words bursting out of her. "This whole situation is completely insane. I came here for a job interview. A normal, boring job interview. Now I'm married to a man I don't know, wearing a ring that probably costs more than my car, at a reception that could fund a small country's economy, being offered millions of dollars to pretend to be in love. This doesn't happen to real people. And yet, here you are." Zara's tone was sympathetic, rather than mocking. "Look, I don't know you. Maybe you're a gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it. Maybe you're just someone who got caught up in circumstances beyond your control. But I do know Sebastian, and he's one of the good ones. Rare in our world." "Your world," Lena repeated. "See? That's the problem. This isn't my world. I don't belong here. Nobody belongs here," Zara said with surprising bitterness. "We're all just performing our assigned roles. At least you have the option to walk away when the show ends." Before Lena could respond, Sebastian appeared at her elbow. He looked slightly frazzled, his tie loosened and a strand of hair falling across his forehead. "There you are. I've been looking for you. Zara, stop trying to recruit my wife to your cynical worldview." "Too late," Zara said cheerfully. "We're best friends now. Girls' night next week, we're getting drunk and talking about how terrible men are." "I look forward to being the primary subject of that conversation," Sebastian said dryly. He turned to Lena. "I hate to ask, but we need to make one more appearance. My grandmother is giving her speech, and we need to be front and center for it." Lena's brief respite evaporated. Of course. They made their way to the front of the ballroom, where a small stage had been set up. Victoria Sterling stood at the microphone, waiting for the room to quiet. When she had everyone's attention, she smiled with perfect grace. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate this joyous occasion. As Sebastian's grandmother and the matriarch of the Sterling family, it falls to me to offer some words of wisdom to the happy couple." Her gaze landed on Sebastian and Lena with laser precision. "Marriage is a sacred institution," Victoria continued, her voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom, "built on trust, honesty, and mutual understanding. It requires patience, commitment, and above all, genuine love. Without these foundations, even the most promising union will crumble." The words were lovely, but there was steel beneath the silk. Lena felt Sebastian tense beside her. "I've known Sebastian since he was born," Victoria went on. "Watched him grow from a stubborn child into an even more stubborn man. He's always been impulsive, quick to make decisions without fully considering the consequences. I hope that in Lena, he's found someone who will help temper those impulses with wisdom and foresight." It was a masterclass in passive aggression, every sentence a hidden criticism disguised as loving concern. To the happy couple, Victoria raised her glass. "May your marriage be everything you both deserve." The room echoed the toast, glasses clinking in a crystalline chorus. But Lena heard the unspoken message clearly. Victoria didn't believe in this marriage, and she was watching, waiting for it to fail so she could swoop in and claim what she believed was rightfully hers. The reception finally began to wind down around midnight. Guests started trickling out in groups, offering final congratulations and promises to have the couple over for dinner soon. Lena's feet ached from the heels she'd been wearing for 8 hours straight, and her face felt frozen in a permanent smile. She'd never been so exhausted in her life. "Almost done," Sebastian murmured, reading her fatigue. "Just the exit. And then we can leave." The exit? They're going to make us run through sparklers or something equally photogenic while everyone cheers. Then we get into a car and disappear into the night. It's traditional. Everything about today has been surreal. Why should the ending be any different? True to Sebastian's prediction, the coordinator assembled the remaining guests into 2 lines leading from the ballroom to the elevator bank. Someone produced dozens of sparklers, and as Sebastian and Lena walked between the rows of glittering light, rice and rose petals rained down on them. It was beautiful and ridiculous and utterly overwhelming. Finally, blessedly, they were in an elevator descending to the ground floor, then into another waiting car. This one pulled away from the plaza and merged into late-night Manhattan traffic. Lena kicked off her heels with a groan of relief and leaned back against the leather seat, closing her eyes. "You were incredible tonight," Sebastian said quietly. "I know I keep saying that, but it's true. You handled everything they threw at you with grace I didn't expect." "I was terrified the entire time," Lena admitted. "I kept waiting for someone to point at me and yell imposter. Welcome to high society. We're all imposters, Just some of us have been practicing longer. The car wound through the city streets, eventually pulling up in front of a sleek glass tower in Tribeca. A doorman in a crisp uniform opened the car door, greeting Sebastian by name. They rode an elevator to the penthouse in silence, exhaustion settling over both of them like a heavy blanket. The penthouse was exactly what Lena had expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline, modern furniture in shades of gray and cream, art on the walls that was probably worth more than her childhood home. It was beautiful and impersonal, like a high-end hotel suite. "The guest room is this way," Sebastian said. Leading her down a hallway, he opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with an ensuite bathroom. "Everything you need should be here. If it's not, just ask. I had my assistant stock the closet with some clothes in various sizes. I guessed at yours, so hopefully something fits. Toiletries are in the bathroom." Lena stepped into the room, taking in the plush carpet, the enormous bed with its cloud-like comforter, the view of the Hudson River through the windows. "This is nicer than any place I've ever lived. Make yourself at home. We'll talk in the morning, once we've both had some sleep and can think clearly." Sebastian paused in the doorway. "And Lena? Thank you. Truly. I know I've asked the impossible of you today." "You're welcome," she said, surprising herself by meaning it. "Though I reserve the right to change my mind about all of this once my brain starts working again." He smiled, that transformation of his face that made him look younger and less guarded. "Fair enough. Good night, good night." The door closed softly, and Lena was alone for the first time since she'd walked into that cathedral a lifetime ago. She sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the day washing over her in a delayed wave of emotion. Laughter bubbled up first, slightly hysterical. She'd gotten married today. To a billionaire. By accident. It was the most absurd thing that had ever happened to anyone. Ever. Then the laughter turned to tears. Not sad ones exactly, but a release of the tremendous stress and confusion and fear she'd been holding back all evening. She cried until she was empty, then dragged herself to the bathroom to wash her face and examine the closet Sebastian had mentioned. He'd been thorough. Or, rather, his assistant had been. Multiple outfits in sizes ranging from 4 to 10, still bearing designer tags. Casual clothes, business attire, evening wear. Everything someone might need if they'd suddenly moved in with no preparation. Which was, Lena realized, exactly what had happened. She found pajamas that fit reasonably well and fell into bed, certain she was too wired to sleep. But exhaustion claimed her within minutes, pulling her into deep, dreamless unconsciousness. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the previous day came rushing back, and she sat up abruptly, heart pounding. The platinum ring on her finger caught the morning light, solid proof that it hadn't been a dream. Lena found a robe in the closet and ventured out into the penthouse. Sebastian was in the kitchen, dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt that made him look startlingly normal. He was doing something complicated with an espresso machine, and the domestic scene was so at odds with the billionaire CEO image that Lena had to stifle a laugh. "Coffee?" he offered, noticing her. "Fair warning, I'm very particular about my coffee. It's probably my most annoying trait." "I'll take my chances," Lena said, sliding onto a stool at the kitchen island. "What time is it?" "Almost 10. I let you sleep in. Figured you'd earned it." He handed her a cappuccino with perfect foam art on top, a delicate leaf pattern that seemed almost too pretty to drink. Lena sipped it cautiously and had to suppress a moan. It was possibly the best coffee she'd ever tasted. "Okay, you can be as particular as you want if it always tastes like this." Sebastian grinned, looking pleased. "My one domestic skill. Everything else I'm hopeless at." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, drinking coffee and watching the city come alive below. Then Sebastian set down his cup and turned serious. "We should talk about what happens next." You said you wanted all the details before making a decision. Lena nodded, steeling herself. All right. Let's start with the legal aspects. If I agree to this arrangement, what exactly am I signing up for? Sebastian pulled out a tablet and opened a document. I had my personal attorney draw up a contract last night. Nothing is binding until you sign it. But I wanted you to see what I'm proposing in writing. He slid the tablet across to her, and Lena began to read. The document was surprisingly straightforward, written in language she could actually understand rather than impenetrable legalese. The terms were clear. She would remain married to Sebastian for a period of 1 year from the wedding date. During that time, she would live in the penthouse, accompany him to social and business functions as needed, and maintain the appearance of a genuine romantic relationship in public. In exchange, she would receive a monthly stipend of $50,000 for personal expenses, plus a lump sum of $5 million at the end of the year upon signing divorce papers. If she chose to end the arrangement early, she would receive prorated compensation based on months completed, but only if the separation was mutually agreed upon. If Sebastian's grandmother successfully proved the marriage was fraudulent due to Lena's actions or statements, she would forfeit all compensation and could potentially face legal liability. This is a lot of money, Lena said slowly. More than most people see in a lifetime. It's what your time and cooperation are worth, Sebastian replied. What I'm asking you to do, give up a year of your life, live a lie, deal with the scrutiny and pressure of my world, deserves substantial compensation. And at the end of the year, we just divorce? That's it? That's it. Clean, amicable, no-fault divorce. We cite irreconcilable differences, split our theoretical assets, and go our separate ways. By that point, the trust will have transferred, my grandmother will have no legal recourse, and Sterling Enterprises will be secure. Lena scrolled through the document, her mind racing. What about the other aspects? The living together part. The appearances at functions. What exactly does that entail? Sebastian ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as his tell when he was uncomfortable. I won't lie to you, it will be demanding. There are charity galas, business dinners, family gatherings. My social calendar is packed most weeks. I'd need you to attend events with me, probably 3 or 4 times a month. More during certain seasons. And when we're in public, we need to appear affectionate. Hold hands, kiss occasionally, the usual couple behavior. Nothing inappropriate or uncomfortable, just enough to sell the illusion that we're in love. He paused. I know that sounds clinical. It is clinical, which I realize is part of the problem, but I'll never push you to do anything you're not comfortable with. What about in private? When we're here, in the penthouse. Completely separate lives if you want. You have your room, I have mine. There's a home office you can use if you want to work on your own projects. The kitchen is shared, obviously, but the penthouse is big enough that we can easily give each other space. Sebastian met her eyes steadily. I'm not looking for a real wife, Lena. I'm looking for a partner in a business arrangement who can help me protect something that matters deeply to me. It was honest, at least. Transactional and cold, but honest. Lena appreciated that more than she would have romantic platitudes. Tell me about your grandmother, she said. Why is she so determined to take the company from you? Sebastian's expression darkened. My grandfather built Sterling Enterprises from nothing. Started with one building in Brooklyn and grew it into an empire. He and my grandmother were married for 45 years, but it wasn't a happy marriage. She resented how much time he spent on the business, felt neglected and undervalued. When he died, she expected to inherit everything. But he left it to you instead. With conditions. He knew my grandmother would tear apart his legacy out of spite, so he structured the will to protect the company, leave it to someone who would preserve what he built. That was me. I'd worked alongside him since college, learned the business from the ground up. He trusted me to continue his vision. And your grandmother sees that as a betrayal, She sees it as proof that she never mattered, that the business was always more important than she was. And she's not entirely wrong. My grandfather was obsessed with work. But destroying the company won't bring him back or heal that old wound. It will just put thousands of people out of work and dismantle something remarkable. Lena could hear the passion in his voice when he talked about Sterling Enterprises. This wasn't just about money or power for him. It was about legacy and responsibility. What happens if she finds proof the marriage is fake? Lena asked. What are we actually risking here? For me, I lose the company. My grandmother becomes majority shareholder and can outvote me on every decision. She'll install her own board, her own executives. Everything my grandfather built gets hollowed out and sold off piece by piece. Sebastian's jaw tightened. For you, there could be legal consequences. Fraud charges, potentially. My attorneys would fight it, and I'd cover all your legal expenses, but it would be messy and public. So if I do this, I need to be all in. No half measures. Exactly. Which is why I need you to be absolutely certain before you sign anything. Lena set down the tablet and walked to the windows, looking out over the city. Somewhere down there was her old apartment, probably already being shown to new tenants since she hadn't been able to make this month's rent. Somewhere out there was her old life. Small and struggling and real. And here was this impossible opportunity. A chance to reset everything. To have financial security. To never worry about bills or employment again. All she had to do was pretend to be in love with a handsome billionaire for 1 year. Can I ask you something personal? Lena said, still facing the window. Of course. Why didn't you just find someone else to marry? I mean, you're wealthy, successful, not hard to look at. Surely there are women who would have been willing to enter this kind of arrangement with proper planning and preparation. She heard Sebastian move closer, stopping a few feet behind her. Honestly? I considered it. After Olivia left, I had about 4 hours to find a solution. I thought about calling ex-girlfriends, business associates, anyone who might be willing to help for the right price. But they all came with complications, expectations, histories, agendas. And I came with nothing. You came with honesty, Sebastian corrected gently. When I saw you standing in that cathedral looking terrified and out of place, clutching your interview folder like a lifeline, I saw someone real, someone who wasn't playing games or calculating angles. You were just a person who'd made a mistake and was trying to figure out what to do. That kind of genuine reaction is rare in my world. Lena turned to face him. You're asking me to stop being genuine, to play a role, tell lies, calculate every public interaction. I'm asking you to be selectively genuine, Sebastian said. With me, in private, you can be yourself. With Zara and the handful of people we trust, you can be yourself. But with my grandmother, with the press, with the society vultures who will pick apart every word and gesture, yes, I'm asking you to perform. It's what I do every day. It's exhausting and sometimes soul-crushing, but it's survivable. You make it sound so appealing, Lena said dryly. I'm not going to lie and pretend this will be easy or fun. It will be hard work, and there will be moments when you hate me for getting you into this situation. Sebastian stepped closer, his expression earnest. But I promise, I will do everything in my power to make it bearable. You'll have resources, support, freedom to pursue your own interests, and at the end, you'll have the financial security to build whatever life you want. Lena looked at the ring on her finger, the physical symbol of the choice before her. I need some time. Not long. I know you need an answer soon. But a few hours to think without you watching me. Take all the time you need. Well, until tomorrow, Sebastian amended with a slight smile. We're supposed to have brunch with my grandmother tomorrow afternoon. If you're not there, she'll know something's wrong. No pressure or anything. I'll be in my office making calls. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. There's a gym on the second level if you want to work out stress. Books in the library. TV in the living room. Just make yourself at home. He left her alone with her thoughts and the staggering view of Manhattan stretching out in all directions. Lena spent the next few hours exploring the penthouse, partly out of curiosity and partly to avoid thinking about the decision weighing on her. The gym was better equipped than most professional facilities. The library held first editions and rare books alongside bestsellers and guilty pleasure reads. The living room's entertainment system was more complex than the control panel of a spaceship. Everything spoke of unlimited resources, of a life where money was never a concern, where anything could be acquired or experienced with a simple transaction. It was seductive and terrifying in equal measure. She found herself in Sebastian's office, not snooping exactly, but absorbing the personal details visible in the space. Photographs on the desk showed a younger Sebastian with an older man she assumed was his grandfather. Same eyes, same determined set to the jaw. They were standing in front of a half-constructed building, both wearing hard hats and grinning proudly. Another photo showed Sebastian at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by smiling people in work uniforms. A third captured him volunteering at what looked like a soup kitchen. These weren't the photos of someone who cared only about wealth and power. These were the photos of someone who valued legacy, community, making a difference. Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She'd managed to retrieve it from the cathedral. Some helpful soul had collected her scattered resume and folder and left them with the hotel staff. Now her phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother and a text message. Tried to call. Just wanted to check how your interview went. Call when you can. Love you. The interview. The job she'd never gotten. The normal life she'd been trying so hard to maintain. What would she tell her mother? Hi Mom, I accidentally got married to a billionaire and now I'm considering pretending to be in love with him for a year in exchange for $5 million? Her mother would think she'd lost her mind. And maybe she had. But then again, what was the alternative? Go back to her studio apartment. Except she couldn't, because she'd already lost it. Crash with friends while continuing to job hunt in an impossibly competitive market. Struggle for months or years to get back to just barely making ends meet. Always one emergency away from financial disaster. Or take this opportunity. 1 year of playing a role, and she'd have security. Not just for herself, but for her mother, who'd worked 2 jobs to put Lena through college and was now facing retirement with almost nothing saved. She could help her mother, could make sure she was comfortable and cared for. Wasn't that worth 1 year of discomfort? Lena walked back to the kitchen and found Sebastian exactly where he said he'd be, in his office on a conference call that sounded extremely boring and financial. She waited in the doorway until he noticed her, then held up one finger to indicate she needed a minute. He wrapped up the call with impressive efficiency and turned to face her. Have you made a decision? I have questions first. Real ones, not legal ones. Ask anything. What happens if we actually can't stand each other? If 6 months in, we're making each other miserable? Sebastian considered this seriously. Then we reevaluate. I won't hold you prisoner in a situation that's become toxic. We'd work out a fair exit that protects us both as much as possible. What if you meet someone? Someone you actually want to be with? That's not going to happen, Sebastian said with complete certainty. I don't have time or interest in a real relationship. This arrangement is actually ideal for me. It keeps my grandmother at bay and gives me a socially acceptable reason to avoid the dating scene. What if I meet someone? Lena pressed. Sebastian's expression became carefully neutral. That would be complicated. We'd have to be discreet. The appearance of infidelity would give my grandmother ammunition. But I won't ask you to be celibate for a year. We'd figure something out. It was a practical answer, if deeply unromantic. Everything about this arrangement was practical and unromantic, which was somehow both reassuring and depressing. Last question, Lena said. Why should I trust you? You're asking me to completely upend my life based on promises from someone I met yesterday. You could change the terms, refuse to pay, make my life hell. What's to stop you from taking advantage of the situation? It was the question that had been gnawing at her since she'd woken up. Trust was earned over time, through consistent actions and proven reliability. She had none of that with Sebastian. You're right to ask, Sebastian said. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Zara, can you come to the penthouse? I need you to do something. He listened for a moment. Yes, now. Thanks. He hung up and looked at Lena. Zara will be here in 20 minutes. While we wait, let me show you something. He led her to his office and pulled up a document on his computer. This is my personal financial statement, prepared by my accountant. These are my assets, investments, holdings. I'm showing you this not to brag, but to demonstrate that I have far more to lose than you do. If I breach our contract, if I fail to pay you what I've promised, you can sue me for everything I'm worth. And you'll win. Lena scanned the figures, her eyes widening at numbers that seemed surreal. Sebastian was wealthier than she'd imagined, with diverse investments across multiple sectors. More importantly, Sebastian continued, my reputation matters to me. Not my social reputation. I honestly don't care that much what society thinks. But my business reputation, my integrity in dealings, that's everything. If word got out that I'd cheated you, that I'd entered a contract and failed to honor it, I'd be finished in the business world. No one would trust me again. So you're saying self-interest will keep you honest. Self-interest is actually the most reliable motivator there is, Sebastian said with a slight smile. I want to keep my company, and I need you to help me do that. Screwing you over would be spectacularly stupid and self-destructive. I'm many things, but I'm not stupid. The doorbell rang, and moments later Zara entered, looking curious and slightly concerned. What's the emergency? Lena needs a reason to trust me, Sebastian said simply. I'm putting you in charge of her contract and payments. Zara's eyebrows rose. You want me to manage your fake wife's compensation? I want you to be her advocate. Review the contract. Make sure it's fair. Hold the money in escrow. Whatever makes her comfortable. You're the only person I trust completely, and I'm hoping that makes you someone she can trust too. Zara looked at Lena with new respect. Smart. Never trust the person who benefits most from your cooperation. Always get a neutral third party. She turned to Sebastian. You realize this means I'll actually advocate for her interests, right? If I think you're being unfair, I'll tell you. I'm counting on it. Zara settled into a chair and gestured for Lena to join her. All right, let's see this contract and make sure my idiot friend isn't trying to cheat you. For the next hour, Zara went through the contract line by line, explaining implications Lena hadn't considered and suggesting modifications that strengthened her position. She negotiated an increase in the monthly stipend, added provisions for what would happen if Sebastian's grandmother discovered the truth through no fault of Lena's, and insisted on a clause that allowed Lena to end the arrangement with full payment if Sebastian became abusive or violated certain boundaries. Not that I think he will, Zara said, shooting Sebastian a warning look, but it's always better to have protections in place. Powerful men have a way of forgetting their promises when it's inconvenient. Noted, Sebastian said mildly. Anything else? Yes. Lena needs a lawyer of her own to review this, someone who represents only her interests. I don't have a lawyer, Lena said. I can barely afford my phone bill. Sebastian's paying, Zara said firmly. Right, Sebastian? Of course. I'll have my assistant set up consultations with 3 different attorneys. Lena can choose whichever one she's most comfortable with. Zara nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now, the money. I propose we set up a trust account in Lena's name. Monthly stipends get deposited automatically. The $5 million gets placed in escrow now, released to her at the end of the year or prorated based on the contract terms if things end early. That way there's no question about whether the money exists or whether Sebastian will actually pay. Works for me, Sebastian said. Lena? She was overwhelmed by Zara's efficiency and advocacy. This woman barely knew her, yet she was fighting to protect Lena's interests with fierce dedication. It was the first thing about this entire situation that made her feel less alone. That sounds good, Lena managed. Thank you, Zara. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you've survived your first charity gala. Zara stood and fixed Sebastian with a stern look. I'm holding you to all of this. If you make me regret advocating for you, I will make your professional life a living hell. Understood. After Zara left, Lena and Sebastian sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Lena spoke. I'll do it. I'll sign the contract and play the role of your wife for 1 year. Relief flooded Sebastian's face. Thank you. I know this isn't what you wanted. No, it's not, Lena interrupted. I wanted a normal job and a normal life. But sometimes you have to work with what the universe gives you. This is what I have right now, so I'm going to make the best of it. I promise I'll make this as painless as possible. Don't make promises you can't keep, Lena said, but she smiled slightly to take the edge off the words. Just be honest with me. That's all I ask. If something's going to be difficult, tell me. If your grandmother is plotting something, warn me. Don't try to protect me with ignorance. Deal. The next few weeks established a rhythm that was both surreal and oddly comfortable. Lena met with the attorney Zara had recommended, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who read through the contract with forensic attention to detail and declared it fair, though she negotiated a few additional protections. The trust account was established, and Lena watched in disbelief as her monthly stipend appeared in her account like magic. She moved her few possessions into the penthouse, which took all of 2 hours since she'd already lost most of her furniture when she couldn't pay for storage. The guest bedroom became hers, and she slowly personalized it with photographs, books, small touches that made it feel less like a hotel and more like home. Sebastian was surprisingly easy to live with. He kept odd hours, often working late into the night and then sleeping until mid-morning. When their schedules overlapped, they fell into comfortable routines. Coffee in the morning, occasionally cooking dinner together, watching documentaries in the evening while sitting at opposite ends of the enormous couch. He was smart and funny when he let his guard down, with a dry wit that caught Lena off guard. They discovered a shared love of true crime podcasts and terrible reality TV, bonding over their mutual trashy entertainment preferences. Sometimes Lena would forget this was a business arrangement and would find herself actually enjoying his company. But then there would be events, the charity galas, the business dinners, the society functions where they had to perform their roles as the perfect couple. Those nights reminded Lena exactly what this was. A transaction, a performance, a necessary deception. The first big test came 3 weeks into their arrangement. The Sterling Foundation Annual Gala, one of the biggest charity events of the New York social season. Lena spent the afternoon being styled by a team Sebastian hired. Hair, makeup, a dress that cost more than 3 months of her old rent. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like she belonged in Sebastian's world, all polished elegance and expensive sophistication. "You look beautiful," Sebastian said when she emerged. He wore a classic tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a vintage Hollywood film. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and Lena felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with their arrangement. "We look like we're playing dress-up," she said, trying to break the strange tension. "Welcome to my entire existence," Sebastian replied with a slight smile. "Come on, let's go be dazzling and charming for people we mostly can't stand." The gala was held at the Natural History Museum, the entire building transformed into an elegant party space. They walked the red carpet together, Sebastian's hand warm on the small of her back, both of them smiling for cameras and deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. Inside, they worked the room like a team, Sebastian introducing her to important contacts while Lena charmed them with genuine interest in their work and lives. She was good at this, Lena discovered. Years of coordinating events had taught her how to read people, how to make them feel heard and valued. She could ask the right questions, laugh at mediocre jokes, remember details about people's children and pets. The skills she'd developed professionally translated surprisingly well to this bizarre social performance. "You're a natural," Zara murmured during a quiet moment. She'd attended the gala as Sebastian's CFO and had been watching Lena navigate the crowd with approval. Half the women here are seething with jealousy, and the other half are trying to figure out how to become your best friend. I'm just doing what I did in my old job, except the stakes are higher and the dresses are nicer. Don't sell yourself short. You're making this believable in a way I didn't think possible. Even I almost believe you're in love with him. And I know the truth. Lena glanced across the room to where Sebastian was deep in conversation with a group of investors. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and met her eyes, smiling in a way that made something warm unfurl in her chest. Sometimes I almost believe it too, Lena admitted quietly. That's the scary part. The evening's highlight was the auction, with items ranging from vacation packages to private performances by famous musicians. Sebastian bid aggressively on a painting, driving the price up until he won it for an astronomical sum. When Lena questioned him about it later, he shrugged. "It's for charity, and besides, my grandmother was bidding against me. Couldn't let her win. You spent $500,000 out of spite?" "I spent $500,000 supporting arts education for underprivileged children while also annoying my grandmother." Multitasking, Victoria Sterling had been circling them all evening like a shark, never attacking directly but always present, always watching. She cornered them near the end of the night, her smile sharp and her eyes calculating. "Lena dear, you've been the talk of the evening. Everyone wants to know more about the mysterious woman who captured my grandson's heart so completely and so quickly." "I'm not that mysterious," Lena said, keeping her voice light and pleasant. "Just someone who got very lucky." "Indeed. Lucky seems to be the appropriate word." Victoria's gaze was penetrating. "I've been making some inquiries about you, of course. Due diligence for family purposes, you understand." Lena's heart rate kicked up, but she maintained her composure. "Of course. What would you like to know?" "I'm curious about your employment history. You worked in events coordination, yes? Though you've been unemployed for the past 6 months. The industry has been challenging," Lena acknowledged. "I was between positions when I met Sebastian. How fortunate that you met him when you did. Some might say suspiciously fortunate." Sebastian's hand found Lena's, his grip firm and reassuring. "Grandmother, if you have something to say, just say it." Victoria's smile didn't waver. "I'm simply observing that fairy tales rarely happen in real life. Poor girl meets rich man and lives happily ever after? It's the stuff of romance novels, not reality. Maybe you've just become too cynical to recognize genuine connection when you see it," Sebastian said coolly. "Not everyone calculates the cost-benefit analysis of every relationship." The barb hit its mark. Victoria's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "We'll see how genuine it all is when the novelty wears off." "Marriage is a marathon, not a sprint, Sebastian. I wonder if either of you is prepared for the distance." She drifted away, leaving tension in her wake. Lena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She's going to keep digging," she said quietly. "Looking for proof. Let her dig. There's nothing to find except a real marriage certificate and 2 people who are really living together. Everything else is just her suspicions, and suspicions aren't evidence." They left the gala around midnight, exhausted from hours of performance. In the car ride home, Lena kicked off her heels and leaned her head back against the seat. "How do you do this all the time? I feel like I've run a marathon. You get used to it. Eventually you develop a kind of autopilot for these events. Smile, nod, say the right things, and let your mind wander somewhere else entirely. That sounds depressing. It is, Sebastian agreed. But it's part of the job. The company needs these connections, these relationships. If I have to suffer through boring conversations and expensive dinners to maintain them, that's what I do. Back at the penthouse, they both changed into comfortable clothes. Without discussing it, they ended up in the living room, Lena curled into one corner of the couch while Sebastian claimed the other. He poured them both generous glasses of wine. To surviving our first major public appearance, he toasted. To many more nights of champagne, small talk, and your grandmother's thinly veiled hostility, Lena added. They clinked glasses and drank. The wine was excellent. Because of course it was. Everything in Sebastian's world was excellent, and expensive and slightly overwhelming. Can I ask you something? Lena said after a comfortable silence. What was your grandfather like? Really like, not the public version. Sebastian's expression softened. Complicated. Brilliant and driven, but also capable of real kindness when he chose to show it. He was tough on me growing up, always pushing me to work harder, think smarter, be better. But he also taught me everything I know about business and about leadership. Did you have a good relationship with him? I respected him enormously. I'm not sure I can say I knew him well. He wasn't the type to share his feelings or have heart-to-heart conversations. But I knew he believed in me, and that mattered. Is that why you're fighting so hard to keep the company? For him? Sebastian considered this. Partly. But also for the 3,000 people who work for Sterling Enterprises. For the communities we invest in and the projects we build. My grandmother sees the company as an asset to be liquidated. I see it as a living thing that needs to grow and evolve. We're fundamentally incompatible in our visions. Lena studied him in the soft lamplight, seeing past the billionaire facade to the man underneath. He genuinely cared about this work, about the impact of his decisions. It made her feel less guilty about helping him, knowing that the stakes were bigger than just his personal wealth. What about you? Sebastian asked. Why events coordination? What drew you to that field? I told you about the ballet, right? How I wasn't quite good enough to make it professionally? At his nod, she continued. I loved the performance aspect, but I also loved the production side. The way a successful show required hundreds of moving parts to work in perfect synchronization. Events are like that. You're creating a moment, an experience, and everything has to come together just right. You're good at it. I watched you tonight. And you were working that room like a professional. Thanks. Though technically, I am now a professional at this. You're paying me to attend these things. True. Best money I've ever spent, actually. They talked late into the night, sharing stories from their vastly different backgrounds. Sebastian grew up in Manhattan penthouses and boarding schools, groomed from childhood for his eventual role. Lena grew up in a small Ohio town, daughter of a single mother who worked as a nurse. Their worlds should never have intersected, yet here they were, bound together by circumstance and contract. The weeks turned into months, and their partnership deepened in unexpected ways. They developed inside jokes and shared references. Sebastian started consulting Lena on Sterling Enterprises projects, valuing her event coordination perspective on community engagement initiatives. She began attending his business meetings, not as decoration but as a genuine contributor. Zara became a real friend, someone Lena could confide in without judgment. They had weekly lunches where Lena could drop the performance and just be herself. Zara introduced her to other women in their circle who were smart and successful in their own right, not just wealthy wives collecting charity board positions. Lena discovered she actually enjoyed parts of her new life. The financial security was liberating. She could help her mother, who cried with relief when Lena paid off her debts and set up a retirement account for her. She could pursue interests without worrying about cost, taking classes in photography and Italian cooking just because they interested her. But there were also difficult moments. The constant scrutiny from press and society, the pressure to always look perfect, act perfect, be the ideal version of Mrs. Sebastian Sterling. The growing confusion about her own feelings as the line between performance and reality blurred. 6 months into their arrangement, Lena woke up one morning and realized something terrifying. She was falling in love with her fake husband. It had happened gradually, so slowly she hadn't noticed, until the feelings were already too deep to dismiss. The way Sebastian brought her coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked. The way he listened when she talked about her day, actually engaged rather than just waiting for his turn to speak. The way he touched her in public, supposedly for show, but with a gentleness that felt genuine. She tried to ignore it, to remind herself this was temporary and transactional. But her heart wasn't listening to logic. The realization came to a head at Sebastian's birthday celebration. A small dinner party at the penthouse, with only close friends and trusted colleagues. Lena had spent weeks planning it, wanting to give him something meaningful. She'd tracked down a first edition of his favorite book, had his favorite meal catered, invited the handful of people he actually cared about rather than the hundreds who wanted access to him. When Sebastian walked into the surprise party and saw what she'd done, the expression on his face made her chest ache. Pure, unguarded joy and surprise, like she'd given him something precious. "You did this for me?" he asked, looking around at the intimate gathering. "You mentioned once that you'd never had a birthday party that was actually about you. Just networking opportunities disguised as celebrations. I wanted to give you something real." He pulled her into a hug, holding her close for a long moment. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "This is perfect." Later that night, after the guests had left and they were cleaning up together, Sebastian opened the first edition book with reverent care. "This must have cost a fortune," he said, running his fingers over the aged pages. "It's your birthday. You're supposed to get something meaningful." Sebastian looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Lena, He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "These past 6 months have been unexpected." Her heart hammered. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" "Good. Really good." He set down the book and stepped closer. "I know this started as a business arrangement. And maybe it still is for you. But somewhere along the way it stopped feeling fake to me." Lena could barely breathe. "Sebastian, I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "Maybe I already have fallen. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it's real. And if this is completely one-sided, and I'm about to make everything incredibly awkward, tell me now, and we'll never speak of it again." She couldn't find words, so she answered with action instead. She closed the distance between them and kissed him, pouring 6 months of confusion and longing and impossible feelings into that contact. Sebastian responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her close as the kiss deepened into something that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with genuine connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena pressed her forehead against his. "It's not one-sided," she whispered. "I've been trying not to feel this for months now. I kept telling myself it was just the situation, the proximity, the performance. But it's real. You're real to me." "So what do we do now?" Sebastian asked. "The contract still has 6 months remaining." "We finish what we started," Lena said. "We get you past the trust deadline and keep your grandmother from destroying everything you've built. But we do it as a real couple, not actors playing roles." "And after?" "When the year is up." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "We renegotiate the contract, maybe one that doesn't have an end date." Sebastian kissed her again, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Best business deal I've ever made." The final 6 months flew by in a blur of genuine happiness. They stopped pretending and started truly building a life together. The public appearances became easier because the affection was real. Victoria's suspicions actually decreased, ironically, because authentic love was harder to fake than they'd managed before. On their 1-year anniversary, The day the trust officially transferred and Sebastian's control of Sterling Enterprises became absolute, they threw another wedding ceremony. This one was small and private, just close friends and family who knew the truth. Lena wore a simple dress she'd chosen herself, and Sebastian's vows were ones he'd written from the heart. "I went into a church looking for a solution to a problem," he said, his hands clasping hers. "And I found the love of my life instead. Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger, for putting up with my world, and for somehow finding something worth loving in me." "I went into that church looking for a job," Lena replied through happy tears. "And I found a partner, a best friend, and the person I want to spend the rest of my life annoying. You gave me security, but more importantly, you gave me yourself. That's the real treasure." They kissed as husband and wife for the second time, but this time it meant everything. Victoria Sterling attended the ceremony, her expression inscrutable. Afterward, she approached Lena with something that might have been respect in her eyes. "You won," she said simply. "Not the game I thought we were playing, but perhaps a better one. Take care of my grandson. He needs someone strong enough to stand up to him." "I will," Lena promised. Zara raised a toast at the small reception, to Lena and Sebastian, who proved that sometimes the most unexpected situations lead to the most perfect outcomes. "May your actual marriage be even better than your fake one." "To us," Sebastian said, pulling Lena close. "And to wrong turns that lead to exactly where we're supposed to be." Years later, Lena would tell their children the story of how she'd walked into the wrong church at the wrong time and accidentally married their father. She'd describe the terror and confusion, the business arrangement that became real love, the society grandmother who'd inadvertently brought them together through her scheming. And she'd always end the story the same way: sometimes the best things in life come from the mistakes we make. I went looking for a job and found a family instead. Your father went looking for a business solution and found love, and we both got exactly what we needed. Even though it was nothing like what we thought we wanted, the ring on her finger,